Right, good morning, everyone. I think we've just got a few people that are still joining, so we'll just give it a minute for everyone to join, and then we'll start today's webinar. Okay, so it looks like we have quite a few people on the call this morning for our webinar on voice technology in the supply chain. So I'll hand over to our presenters for today and hand over to Jeff.
Thank you very much, and good morning everyone, and welcome to the webinar. So we're really excited today to talk about the changing face of voice. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. So the webinar will be recorded, and we'll send a copy of the webinar to all the attendees after the event today. And we have a chat open, so if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We've made sure that we've got plenty of time to pick up any questions at the end. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today. So I'll hold that for a second. I'll just do a brief introduction. So my name is Jeff Gray, and I'm the product manager for the Config team. So my main responsibilities are looking after our software solutions, which are coding control, pre-built, and either console, as well as other innovation areas that we're focused on. And I'm also joined by Gavin Clark today from Lydia Voice. Gavin, could you give a brief introduction?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gavin Clark. As Jeff said, I'm the country manager for EPG, the parent company of Lydia Voice. So been in warehouse management software and supply chain software for nearly 20 years, and looking forward to talking to you about Lydia Voice today in conjunction with TCT.
Thank you very much. Okay, so what we are going to talk to you today about is the following. So we're going to talk about the current technology solutions in the marketplace around voice, but also scanning and where voice fits. We're going to talk around Lydia Voice, and Gavin's going to run a really interesting session on what the capabilities are and the latest and greatest with Lydia. We'll then talk about SAP integration and how voice can be integrated tightly with SAP. And then finally, we've got plenty of time at the end to have any questions from anybody in the audience. Okay, so challenges in warehouse environments. So voice technology isn't new. It's been around for over 30 years, but has gone through a lot of change and improvements over the years. But with the current landscape in terms of supply chain and the current warehouse challenges, there is a lot of great value that the voice can deliver. So if we just look at just a few specific areas, we talk about consumer expectations for faster deliveries. We all know around Amazon and same-day deliveries, around more impact on picking operations from an outbound perspective. We're in a warehouse, and the requirement to be able to pick, pack in an accurate manner, and get the flow of the warehouse as efficient as possible. We also have a big labour constraint and shortage within the industry. I think there's 59% of supply chain professionals are facing this challenge today, and the requirement for running warehouses as efficient as possible. And then finally, humans working in digital environments. So there is a lot of automation. There's a lot of technology coming in to automate and to use machines where possible, but specific areas in the warehouse and specific processes really require a human to be able to do that, and this is where voice can really drive value and help in this scenario. So technology in the supply chain, where does voice fit in? We at the Config team have a real clear view around using the right technology and the right use case to solve business problems, and see voice as part of that portfolio. So we have mobile scanning solutions, so pre-built, as most people are aware of, that we have. We see that in terms of specific areas around goods in, around areas of other replenishment, production, supply, where there's real value and a requirement to have a screen and being able to scan. We'll talk more around voice and where the specific use cases and where that really drives around hands-free enablement. But we also see areas around things like augmented reality now coming to fruition, around using cameras to overlay and read barcode or different information and present that to help an operator with his role to drive business efficiency. And then we also have seen more and more new technology coming into the supply chain. Drones, as an example, we've seen use cases around physical inventory and taking away any manual intervention there as well. For each of these technologies around the right use case to drive that operational efficiency. So I'm just going to hand over to Gavin, who's going to tell us a bit more.
Thanks, Jeff. That's great. Appreciate that. So I think this slide, but first of all, just to highlight that humans have evolved to communicate using voice for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And it's only really in the last sort of 50, 60 years where we started to force humans to interact with computers via screens and keyboards. And then, as you will have noticed with the likes of Alexa and Siri and things like that, the technology now is there to allow people to interact in real time with real voice questions. Now, as I'm sure all of you Alexa and Siri users will know, that sometimes that technology isn't perfect. And what we want to talk to you today is how the Lydia technology doesn't rely on trying to recognize 600,000 words in the English language and sometimes getting that wrong. You ask for Robbie Williams and you get Robin Williams. It's really about that sort of interaction and how we use the technology along with some clever analysis to make the recognition absolutely flawless for our operators. So as we were just talking, the primary use for most people and most people's experience, I think, with voice will be around item and case picking. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. The item and case picking is the key environment where voice was born. A lot of the largest retailers in the world found that making this the ability for the operators to be able to pick with their hands free, their eyes free, they can focus on what they're doing. It drives up accuracy because they're looking at the cases rather than having to keep referring to screens each time, and that's really where it's been born. However, what we've found over the past few years is that you can start to broaden that case out. So whether that be case replenishments, whether it be inventory moves, a lot of customers are using it on things like VNA, so that the drivers are able to focus on driving the vehicles and heavy machinery rather than having to keep referring to screens or tablets or docked stations. And another area is in service and inspections. So we have customers like Volkswagen, Audi and BMW where they'll want the operators to be able to concentrate on what they're looking at while interacting with the system. Most often SAP, where it's driving these inspections, taking them through those step-by-step inspection cases where they can pass or fail, and then they can create sort of voice notes as well. So really a lot in use, and certainly broadening out more and more as the technology improves. So a lot of people are familiar with voice, as you see here. Back in the late 80s, the first voice recognition was around what we call pattern matching. So this is where you would have to read a template. So each operator has to read a template where they teach the system how they say all the numbers and Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, etc., etc. This is time consuming, doesn't take into account the way that people change the way that they speak, warehouse noises and environmental changes, and we've had all sorts of stories from people using this first generation technology where simple things like coughing or pallet dropping will confuse the voice recognition engine. So back in 2006, Lydia created a new way of recognizing voice, what we call Gaussian mixed models, and we'll go into some of the details on that in a bit more in some of the later slides. But what this first move away from that voice recognition and that template training meant that people didn't have to go through any template training. They could simply pick up a device and they could start to use it, and the system would then use this statistical analysis to work out what the word was and then match that with the accepted grammar, which was good and did very well. However, as technologies come on, computing power's got more, and certainly the ability for machine learning to increase and create thousands and thousands of decisions each second, we now move to our third generation, which is this sort of deep learning neural network recognition pattern. And again, we'll go into the details on that and what that means for your warehouse. So The Gaussian mix model, the way that pattern matching moved from pattern matching and moved to this ability to splice words. So what you have to do in voice recognition, and this came from a deck of over 40 different slides that our voice specialist did to some university graduates. So I've slimmed it down, and if you want to get into more detail on that, then please do let me know. I've got a huge deck. We can talk for hours about voice recognition. But in simple terms, what this is that each word is broken down, as you see on the screen there on the left, into these phonemes and then broken down to units. These units then are then compiled, as you can see on the screen there, one of 1, 1 of 2, 1 of 3, 1 of 4, and then create the word. So it splits it down into these phonemes and then takes these units, but it builds it up sequentially. So the letters of b, ra, v, o. It's picking each one of those sounds, it's putting them together, and then it's making some decisions to create what it calls a speech state, a speech machine. And then it accepts that, recognizes that, and then as you see on the right hand side of the slide there, it does that for each word. So if I'm saying Alpha Charlie, or I'm saying 1, 2, or all these sorts of things, it's slowly building that up. The challenge is that everybody had with that, and people still have with that technology to this day, is that if that speech state, as it's building that word, is interrupted by a pallet being dropped in the background, or somebody pressing a horn on a MHE device or something like that, the recognition then fails, and then it has to go again. And voice recognition is all about confidence. So it will not get to the point where it's confident that it's recognized the word, and the operator will either have to repeat it or the system will misrecognize the word. So we try to take that a stage further. What the machine learning does, what that technology does, is allows each client software, and again, really important to highlight that the technology that you're familiar with Siri and Alexa will sample the sound and will send that via the internet to a huge server farm where there's all the processing power that will try and recognize all of these 600,000 words of English language, and even more in other spoken languages. What we do with Lydia is all of that computing power is dealt with on the client, making it very, very quick, very, very fast. But obviously, we can't recognize all of those words. So what the system first of all does is it takes those words, and taking it further than the phonemes, it slices it into these little tiny pieces called perceptrons, and then uses different statistical analysis to then, as you see there, build up with what they call these layers. And each layer then creates an output layer, and then the output layer is then calculated by the machine. But what it isn't doing it one by one by one. It takes the entire word, splits it into these perceptrons, and then uses some analysis to then create those words. So you'll see on the bottom there that each speech state is single, S1, S2, S3, so that it doesn't require the entire word in order to necessarily recognize it. What it'll do is it'll take all of those different functions on the right hand side there, and let's say halfway through saying bravo, somebody does drop a pallet or bip a horn. The system can then look at that and then use the next slide, and it will then use those different pieces on that next slide to then make some decisions. And that's where that deep learning comes from. So it's not literally compiling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's compiling the whole thing using these output layers and then making some decisions based on the following slide. Because Lydia isn't trying to recognize the difference between Robbie Williams and Robin Williams, it's only really looking to recognize about 50, 60 phrases. What we do is we build a grammatical language model, as you see there, or grammar file as we would refer to it. And then there's a statistic model, and then the system uses both of these to make some decisions based on what it has observed, and then what it is then recognizing. So if we have given the system the word grammatical model for Alpha Bravo Charlie, and then it hears it'll look at all the other words in that grammar model and go, well, based on what I've seen, that's probably the best match. And then statistic there, it looks at all the other times that Bravo has been said across all of the language that we've built into the client software, and then it can make that recognition. So that will then allow the system to make better decisions on the language. What it also allows us to do is build that grammar model out. So we've done applications in healthcare where, for instance, we were analysing how something has been placed into a human body, and there's ways of recognizing that it's been put in there via X-ray, or it's been put in there via encephalogram. So as you can imagine, rather than the simple pattern matching, now we can start to recognize longer and more complex words. That then feeds into those service inspection challenges, or allowing people to sort of make more complex requirements for, am I sampling this particular product? Have I done some QS? So it really makes the system far more useful and far more usable in, you know, warehouse and supply chain functions, and also, you know, outside of that. So what does that mean in your warehouse? So literally, as you can see on there on the dark blue side on the left-hand side, each input comes into the system and then it does a recognition process, and it has to hit that recognition threshold in order for it to be, you know, happy that it has recognized that word. However, if that has been broken, which is the gray in the middle there, then that would fail to reach that recognition, and then the operator then has to repeat themselves. What that machine learning does is it just adds that 25% confidence on average to each word, and consequently we're getting more first time every time, and then that helps the system not only be more user friendly, but also driving productivity and making the operator experience far more pleasant. Some additional things that we can do with that technology now is rather than just that pattern matching or that Gaussian mix where we're listening to sort of a single language, what we can now do is we can run multiple recognizers simultaneously. So if you think about certain areas, North America as an example, where a lot of the southern states, Spanish is very much the second language. What the system can do is we can both receive inputs in multiple languages simultaneously, and then we can produce outputs in either the core language of the warehouse operation or the core language of the operator, and then do that operator by operator. So if we have in the UK, we had an influx of different for Ukraine. We also had across a lot of Europe and the UK, we had import from Hong Kong. So we were putting all sorts of different languages in there, so that those people could become more productive more quickly, and as a side effect, I start to learn different ways of speaking English. We actually challenged this at a trade show. We put a series of tongue twisters into Lydia, and then we asked people to try and speak those tongue twisters, and then the system would completely match how they said it and would give them a score. So next time you're at a trade show, look out for us, and we'll see what we can show you with that. Currently, there's 50 language models are immediately available, and as you'll see there, our CEO is very proud of the fact that we had a customer and they needed to add Lithuanian, and we did all sorts of different. It's a very difficult language to put on there. We had to go with the embassy, and we put that on there within 2 weeks. So we can add languages very quickly, and we're happy to continue to develop the library. Now, we've talked about the software, we've talked about the sophisticated technology, but also we provide some hardware to help to have with that. So again, feedback from voice users all the time is that people don't like it because they have to wear headsets. The headsets can be quite hot, or they don't want to share a headset, or they have to wear head protection, or religious garments, etc., etc. What we've now done is produce the latest version of that, which is the VoiceAware Air. What this does is a very lightweight vest. Will sit on the shoulders. It can be worn underneath hivers. It has nothing on the back other than the battery pack at the neck, but it uses all of the technologies that are built into Android. So it's, as you can imagine, when Google was writing Android, it was all about digital, recognizing voices and transmitting voices digitally, and the ability to connect to Bluetooth devices. So it's got all of that technology built into it. It's got a 6 microphone array. So we have on the chest here, there's 4 microphones pointing directly up towards the mouth. And then we also have 2 circular microphones that are listening to all the sounds around, and then the sound processor then is removing all the surrounds. So it's literally just listening to a cone underneath the mouth. And we're continuously optimizing processors so that it's continuously developing its ability to recognize speech faster and faster. So I'll hand you back to Jeff, who will talk to you about how the SAP integration works with Lydia Voice and Prebuilt.
Thanks very much, Gavin. What a brilliant insight into Lydia Voice and the capabilities. Absolutely fantastic. So when we talk about SAP integration or SAP integration, this is obviously typically quite problematic or challenging for a lot of customers that we see in the marketplace. So typically when we're talking about SAP, the project timelines can be anywhere between 6, 9, 12, 18 months, 2 years. And often this comes with quite a complex integration with things like ITS Mobile. So if we think about ITS Mobile, which is SAP's standard scanning solution for WM and EDRM, this is built for scanning, not voice. So typically when we're talking about voice and integrating, voice requires far less inputs and outputs than ITS Mobile does. So there's a lot of complex development and reduction of fields and inputs and outputs that's required to run a voice solution. So this can be very time consuming, multiple skill sets that are required from the customer. So ABAP resource, basis resource, functional teams to do the whole designing of this. And also what we're starting to see more and more is CAOE teams within customers are currently reducing and trying to get that skill set if they want a future change or to make a modification to their voice solution to adapt to the business processes that are constantly changing with the demand of the marketplace at the moment. So, from a Concrete team perspective, what we've been doing is working with Gavin and the team. We've been integrating the Lydia SDK into our pre-built solution. So pre-built is known as a mobile scanning solution, but as we've talked about, really, it's about the right use case and the right technology for each process within a warehouse. And we do see significant value of what the Lydia capability can bring to our warehouse operations. So what we've been doing is we've integrated this into pre-built so that we have the ability to run a scanning solution for, as an example, goods receipt, where you want to do a pallet scan. But then for a picking operation, you can use the same technology stack, same hardware potentially, to be able to do a picking operation, but using the fantastic capability that Gavin talks about, that Lydia voice engine, and doing the picking operations for that. So what does this mean? So this is available within IM, WM, and EDRM within SAP. But what it means is from an end customer perspective, there's direct integration. So it's one technology stack that goes into SAP. It's deployment ready. So where we've really focused on is being able to have what we call a configuration layer. So having flexibility, but taking away all that custom development from ITS Mobile and making that flexible, configurable, and be able to be adaptable for future enhancements or changes as required. We do understand in the SAP world that every customer has a little bit of custom development. So the solution is enhanceable and extendable, but what we're really focused on is that no-code and low-code environment to try and reduce that and the timeline and risk of projects. And then finally, it's available within sort of anywhere within SAP, from as low as Enhancement Pack 4 to Enhancement Pack 5 to the latest versions of S/4HANA, and that can be on-prem, that can be cloud, and things like RISE is supported as well within this. So what does that mean from an end user perspective? It's a single solution, so you can switch from one area to another, where you either want a hybrid of on-screen or off-screen. It's a ready-to-deploy solution, so that configuration framework and that reduction in bespoke development can mean that it can be delivered very quickly. And also it takes away needing complex skill sets and multiple different types of skill sets to basically put it into the hands of functional consultants and make it easy to modify, easy to code, and easy to change. So just in summary, from a Concrete perspective, we love plumbing. We love connecting different hardware and integration with SAP. We work with some fantastic partners, and it's great to have Gavin on the call. So thank you so much for the session you've run today. It's a really great insight into Lydia Voice and the capabilities that it can bring. We've talked about how pre-built can be used for voice and the value of being able to have the right technology using for scanning and voice. We've talked about the deployment ready, so taking away that complex custom development and the long lead times, and bringing that fast to operational teams and making a really big business impact and that overall operational efficiency. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for everyone that's joined the call. Love any questions or any thoughts or any insights. So at that point, we'll just open up the call for questions.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. And
the quiet moment of pause where no one speaks.
Just waiting to see if there's any questions coming in. So I'll just read out any questions as they come in for you both. We have had something that if there is a change required to the voice solution, how is that handled?
Yeah, so when we're talking about SAP, this is specifically SAP, right? So the way we've integrated it into Prebuilt is it's driven from our back-end APIs. So if it's just a field change or a modification to remove a field, as an example, from one of the inputs or outputs, then that can be done in the Prebuilt framework. Obviously, if it's a complete re-engineering of the business process, there might be SAP changes required. But what we're trying to really do is provide that toolkit and provide that configuration framework to really reduce the time of change to make it much more agile for end customers.
Great, thank you. And with the RF coverage, does that need to be 100%?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. So, I mean, from our perspective, we have an ethos of having real-time data connection with SAP. Now, the Prebuilt and Lydia's solution, when we're talking about integrating with Prebuilt, is that we're able to cover black spots within the warehouse. So temporary loss of connection won't kick an operator out and have them to log in and repeat. We do rely on a good RF network. It doesn't need to be 100% coverage, but that is around the real-time act and transact and that real-time communication with the environment. So we have a number of partners that we work with and can suggest and work with end customers to make sure that we've got the right level of RF coverage within the site.
Great. And in terms of the implementing voice into organisations, is there specific types of organisations, types of companies that are adopting this technology?
Yes, I mean, Lydia, over the past sort of 10 years, we've really focused on the retail and distribution areas. So some of the logos that people have heard of, Walmart and Lidl across Europe. We also have Coca-Cola North America. As I mentioned in the presentation, people like Volkswagen, Audi and BMW using Lydia connected directly into SAP to work in their environments for production servicing and service inspection. So there's I think the last time we did a count, there's nearly 400,000 daily users of Lydia worldwide. So it's really the technology is really being embraced across a wide range of areas, and I know, and we are obviously keen to see it grow.
And someone's here just asked about the network connectivity. So if devices are dual wireless and SIM enabled, can the voice and scanning solution change between the two network connectivity types?
Yes. I mean, we've worked with customers before in terms of, from a Wi-Fi connectivity or a 4G, 5G connectivity. So yeah, there's multiple options. There's different approaches to take from that as well. So we can discuss that further, but the capability is definitely there.
And I know you spoke about languages, Gavin, but there's just been a question about whether multiple languages can actually be used at the same time.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so sorry I didn't make that clear enough. It will run multiple languages simultaneously. With the release of Lydia 9 earlier this year, we support 2 languages simultaneously, so English and Polish, or as I've mentioned, American English, because it's very different. They don't think so, but it is. American English and Spanish and all these sorts of things. So yes, you can run 2 simultaneously, and then coming next year, we'll be able to broaden that out further. So there's, that technology will continue to rise. So yes, you can definitely use 2 languages, and if the system will speak in the user language or the core language, and it will listen in the user language or the core language.
Perfect, thank you. And we're just so in terms of the infrastructure and connectivity that's needed, what layers of infrastructure connectivity are needed to enable the voice capability?
So if I talk from a pre-built perspective, then Gary, you can add any specifics for Lydia. So from a pre-built perspective, there'd typically be transports going into your SAP environment for the back-end infrastructure, which is then configured within SAP in terms of the business flows that you want to do. We then have typically it's be Android, so there'd be an Android client, and we'd encompass the SDK for Lydia within that Android client, which would be on the device, and then the connection would be between the SAP system and the device to provide that real-time audio traceability, but also real-time connection.
I don't have anything to add to that. It's as Jeff says, he's much more technical than me, so I'm not going to argue. But it's all based on the client device connecting via Wi-Fi, and then whether that be 100% connectivity, or as we talked about earlier, the ability for the system to store that and wait until it's next in connectivity. We also have a supplementary piece of software that we can deploy called Warehouse Intelligence, Lydia Warehouse Intelligence, and that will then, we can use that to monitor where RF is problematic. The system can constantly manage the signal ratio, the signal strength, and so effectively carrying out an RF survey everywhere in the warehouse. It does all sorts of other things around manage how many times that having to do calls back to SAP, or the voice recognition strength and the confidence, and you can do that. It'll even do some dialogue logging as well, so that you can go back if there are any issues. So there's a number of different things that we can do for that, and as you can imagine, with a broad range of customers that we have, you have to tick a lot of boxes and make sure you've got some solutions.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I think that looks like all the questions. So if there are any that we've missed, we'll get back to people. But I think if there's no more questions, then we'll close the call there.
Thank you so much for everyone joining, and looking forward to having follow-on conversations on this subject.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Cheers, thank you.